Well, hello there, and welcome. It's Saturday afternoon. I've been lost in art this morning, and or craft or creativity, I suppose, for a bit. And I'm just getting around to sharing. I suppose it's Sketchbook Saturdays, sharing my sketchbooks and work in progress, other than the one that I'm colouring in. But just have a look at what I've been doing. So there'll be a shortish video, fingers crossed. Won't witter on too much for you. But this was a drawing that I showed earlier in the week where I discovered how interestingly alcohol markers react with or interact with biro pens, and I actually finished this off. Unfortunately, well, mostly there's some bits of here I haven't done very well, because I think the oil from the biro was beginning to clog up the tip of my clear alcohol marker. So I put it to one side. I'm going to see if giving it a rest will let it work. I don't think it'd run out because I haven't used it that much. It's, relatively new, even though it's old. But I'm really, really happy with how that's turned out. It was a very interesting kind of experience. I'm just flicking through to where I was last time. Yeah, we've been past this one. Haven't done anything with that one. This one, I can see I've added grey to it, and I think I did do that with Pit Artist pens, and I used two different colours of grey and blended them out, so it's beginning to give a bit more volume and dimension to the drawing. There's quite a bit left to do, but again, it's in my sketchbook, so there's no pressure on me to either finish it or to do it within a certain deadline. This one I'm still absolutely loving. I haven't done anything about the green peas. I do want to add a bit more shadow, a bit more contrast in them, and the patterns that are in these sections. But I'm just so happy with that. It just makes me smile when I look at it. And I've just got the we just move a light closer, so perhaps a bit more light will help to see. I've just got that sense of contrast and brightness in a way that I really like it, and it gives that feeling of volume to everything. This one, I think I've shown this one. I finished drawing it. I've done nothing else with it yet. It's just sat in my sketchbook, as things tend to. And then this is one that I finished yesterday, I think. I feel I've finished it. I've signed and dated it. But I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure if I want something coming off here, but I can always add that at a later date. And then the only other things in this book are lots of pages that have been coloured with distress inks, which is lovely. Now this other sketchbook, it's another 19.5 by 19.5 centimetres, so it's about 8 inches or so. Has got a lot of pages that have been coloured with distress inks, and I'll have a flip through those because I've been doing something. You can see the start of something here, and I was drawing this and I'm not sure about it. This will cause some interesting opportunity, shall we say. But I don't know what, I think it's because I was colouring sort of A5 pieces of the Canson Imagine paper yesterday with distress inks, and I thought it just took me back to older sketchbooks when I was doing A-level and beyond, where I would colour pages, or I would add coloured or textured paper to pages and draw over all of it, as if it's just one sheet. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to add little bits of this here. So that's what I've done. So I'll have a flick through. Oh, this is one that I've started drawing on, because I was looking at them and thinking, Angela, what on earth have you done? But then as soon as I start drawing on it, and as soon as I add shadow and depth, things will change with it, because I've automatically got those layers there with the different parts. So it's going to be an interesting experience. I've done a lot of these. Some try to have ones that sort of like go with the background or are minorly jarring against each other, not greatly. It's not been easy. But these papers have been done, like these ones, and the one before have been done with distress oxides. And I've used jelly plates to print from as well, which has been an interesting thing. These backgrounds are just ordinary distress inks. But just distress oxides are more opaque, and they give a very soft feel to the paper. I can't explain, but it changes the way the paper feels because they are pigment inks mixed with dye inks, whereas distress inks are pure dye inks. So pigments are insoluble and they tend to stay on the surface of the paper. Dye inks, these ones are water soluble and they sink into the paper, and they're transparent, whereas pigments are opaque. I think that's my understanding, and I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, but that's how it works with distress inks anyway. And a jelly plate is a piece of, it originally used to be gelatin. They used to be made out of gelatine, but nowadays they're made out of polymers, and so they're sort of spongy, and you can apply inks or paints or whatever onto the surface, and you can apply it in layers if you're using things like acrylic paints that would dry, because you can do the top layer first, that will be visible as the top layer when you print it, and you apply, but it's the bottom layer on the jelly plate. I've tried this and I don't like it, and I don't like paints. They're overly messy and in that kind of way, whereas I use a brayer or whatever with jelly plates to create gradients and things, and a bit of spray water for texture and so on. So I'll eventually work out how it works for me, perhaps. Or it could be one of these things that I do every now and again and circle back to eventually. But I thought the pages themselves, just coloured, are quite interesting. But I thought it could be really interesting to add pieces of these papers I've coloured, particularly with distress ink. I've got some that I've done in distress oxides. I've got some I did in distress ink, and just layer them onto the page as something different. It sort of gives a focal point in some ways, but it's also something I can ignore if I was out drawing and sketching and just draw over it, so it adds some background interest, possibly. Trying different things, so, you know, a shape within a shape. Yeah, apart from one, I've torn the edges because I put one down in its entirety and I thought I don't like that. And I've also distressed the edges. I've used distress inks and a piece of foam just to colour the edges, to give that definition of layers. If I go back here, I haven't done it with this one, and I like that. I wish in future I may do more where I don't distress the edges and just put it down like that, because it's more subtle, whereas when I distress the edges they're far more prominent. But that's fine as well. Interesting colour combinations. This is definitely distress oxide. I think it's peeled bundled sage and dusty concord, I think. But make a really interesting colour gradient there. And here, don't know if you can see, picking up all the water staining on it. There's more here. These ones pick up some of the colours in the background, and I very heavily, this was the first one I did that was torn, and I distressed the edges and I went round it with the foam, and it's just added way too much. This piece underneath here was really interesting because I sprayed water onto the jelly plate that had some distress oxides on. Then I ran the brayer over it, and it created these large droplets of colour, and when I put it down, it picked up that lovely texture that was there. So I liked that. Whether I'd ever get it to do that exactly the same way again, no, never. But I know what I did for the future reference. But it's interesting in its own way. And part of me thinks it'd be nice to draw or add something here and then draw around here, do something. I've also thought about adding quotes or words into these, or perhaps even collaging images. Like I've got some from Tim Holtz, they're photo booth photos, vintage ones. I'm sure they're still available, but I wouldn't like to swear on it. And something like that would sit nicely in there. And of course, there's lots of ways of adding pattern and texture. These are the ones I'm thinking about, words, and this is the one where I adhered this and realised afterwards, actually, I'm not really fussed on those straight edges or the colour combinations. But it matters not, because it can stay as it is, or I can take the page out and repurpose the page. I can't remember if I like the other side a lot though, or disguise it in some way. I'll work with it. Again, this place would be quite nice for a quote. It actually is almost begging for another piece of paper inside it. This one, just an interesting kind of thing. And these were the two same papers, the same paper, two pieces of. And these distress oxides, but the colours, the green, it's the same green here. Don't think I used tea dye in here. There might be a hint of tea dye in the background actually, but it's just, they seem to go together because you've got the greens tied in. This one doesn't really, but again, it's something that I can work with. This one I chose, this colour is the same as this. It's just distress oxides, which are a lot brighter in colour than the distress inks. And again, this is distress oxides, I think. Could be just distress inks. But I've put this here because that blue is the same as this. I think it's chipped sapphire. And so I edged it with that. And it stands out like a sore thumb at the moment, but I shall see what happens when I work on it. This one sort of like ties in. I've used the wrong colour around the edge, but it's fine. It'll disappear because again, I can work over it and it'll disappear into the background, as will this one here, distress oxides, distress inks. This one was absolutely serendipitous. It's almost exactly the same. Well, it's the same blue as is here, and the aged mahogany here and here, and it just begged to go on there. It just worked. This one, again, I've got the textures of the green, and I've got this kind of colour in the background underneath some of the mossy green, but it works. And that is the same as the one on not the last page, a page before. But the colours are similar enough that it sits nicely with that. So I'll see what happens with it, because I don't know. But it seems like a good idea. And what's the worst I've done? I've got pieces of paper that I've coloured that I don't want to work on, but I can always take out and tear up or use in other projects in a similar way to this. So let me know what you think. As I said, once I start drawing on them, things get interesting, because I have these edges, these boxes, these areas to work within, and I tend to do that. Though I know if I do go out drawing, sketching, whatever, then the boxes will just be ignored. I don't know. The last couple of things to show you, because I said it was going to be a fairly quick show and tell today, is these are just a couple of the papers that I coloured yesterday. I used, can see a small square rectangular thing there. That was from a jelly plate. I'll move that over so you can see it. And I wasn't fussed on the creamy off-white paper around it. So I just used some distress inks to go in and add more colour. So it's an interesting one. So I've just drawn over it for the sake of drawing over it. This one I'm really not at all fussed on the colours. I'm not sure what this one is, but the distress inks go on differently onto the Imagine paper than they do into my sketchbook paper, which is to be expected because the texture is different, the way they've been treated is different. You know, the purpose of them, this is mixed media paper, all quite thin, but it's still mixed media paper, whereas this is called all media, but it's different, it's got more of a texture to it. This is much smoother, but I shall see what I shall do with that. I actually quite like this. This is something I did this morning whilst coming round in bed, plus the one I'm holding in my hand, another one. And it was just an example of just let my hand-eye brain work as it wanted to, see what shapes and patterns come out, and I ended up with that. So, who knows? And this was the other one, which was absolutely bonkers. Again, it's a jelly print of a jelly plate print, and I can see I've used reds and pinks, but I don't know what ones, and I put them on with a brayer because you can see the distinct areas, so I'm not very good with a brayer. A brayer is a roller, a rubber roller. But I worked with it in the sense that I looked in the background for where there were lighter areas or darker areas and started to draw shapes around those and just allowed it to grow. It's a bit like crazy pebbles on a beach somewhere, you know, or wherever you find piles of pebbles, really. Rounded, so they're going to be waterborne, well eroded. And I've just gone with that. What I do with that now, yeah, it's begging for some metallics, I think, and possibly some shading. And for that, with distress inks, I can use any media I like. I could use the Inktense pencils I love so much, ordinary coloured pencils, metallic inks, watercolour pencils, the Tombow monos I've got, even alcohol inks if I want, alcohol pens, markers like Copics or the Chameleons. Although these are very tiny areas. But I could also use distress inks like watercolour paints. Just either tap the ink pad down onto a plastic palette and use the ink that comes out like ink, add water to it and use it that way. Or I have got refill bottles of distress ink for refilling the pads, and you just put a little bit of that into a well of a palette and add water, and it works nicely. This one I really like. This one, it's typically me, but not so fussed on that one, but that one really quite like. Very busy. So that's me and my sketchbooks on a Saturday, and I've spent most of the day so far messing about with this stuff, and I've got stained fingers. That's fine, that'll come off. So I hope you've enjoyed the look through. I'm not going to do any drawing or colouring today. The rain has finally stopped here. I'm not quite sure if it's due to stop for good. I'm hoping it will, and I'm going to go and I even haven't got to the shower yet. Shower and go out for a walk, because the air's fresh and clean and the world's been washed clean, and it would just be nice to do. So I'm going to just say thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed a look through sketchbooks. It's a bit different. If you want to see how I apply distress inks, leave a comment. But there are loads and loads of videos on YouTube of people who do them. And I will show you how things like this progress and what happens, because I myself am intrigued to see what I do with them. Because at the moment I'm wondering, what on earth was I thinking? Well, welcome to my weird world from time to time. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, your weekend, or whatever time of day or day of the week you're looking at this. And please take time to be creative, even if you're not sure what's going on, or whether you've done something sensible like me here with these. Just see where it leads you, because I don't know where this is going to lead me. Just something a bit different to do. So take care, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye bye for now.